Hey guys, Introspection here. So as you may or may not know, Mr. Melee, aka the Yoda guy, livestreamed just a couple days ago, and I was able to come on and cover the questions that you guys asked me to ask him. I think I covered most, if not all, of those questions. This video is just going to be the portion of the live stream where I asked him questions, and don't worry, the audio actually turned out decent this time. If you're interested in the whole live stream, I'll leave it down in the description below. In the entire live stream, he actually talks a lot about his philosophies and how he got into art and how he got into the movie industry. I personally found it to be really fascinating, so if you want to check it out, it's in the description below. Otherwise, enjoy this video.
And so I'm going to have a look. I've only got one question. That surprises me. So, if what I've said, makes you, has left you with any other questions. This young man that I was talking to a few days ago, he kept on going very quiet. Every time I talked about something, he said, he was speechless. Don't be speechless. You can ask me about anything. I'm happy to do that. Let's see this. Someone said they've really been enjoying the presentation. Are all the core principles that I've been presented listed in the book? Yeah, they are, and more. The book has a lot of. It's got 77 steps in it, and they aren't steps where you have to do step one before you do step two. They're really more like hints on doing it. I try to give you phrases to hold on to, so that when you reach that moment in your life, in your journey, that where you're hit by a problem, that you can pull that phrase out of your mind because you've read it in the book. Read the book not just once. The book's a small book. It's small enough to really put in a bag or put in your pocket even. What you do is you read one page of the book every morning when you're having breakfast. It's only maybe 2 paragraphs. And when you get to the end of the 77 steps, you start at the beginning again, because what you need to do is drive this home every day. Every time you read through a step that you read through before, it's drummed in that much harder. And if you wrote your notes on the page next to it, your second time through the book, you get to see all the things you wrote down that you didn't get to achieve the first time. And that is a driving force. It's like a little whip that says, hey, pal, come on, you're slacking here. Let's get on with it. Because that's what you need. You don't need someone on your back saying, have you studied this? Have you done that? Have you finished this? You need to drive it yourself from your own heart, from your own passion for whatever that subject might be. Gosh. Have I run out of questions? Is there really, okay. We've got the young man that was interviewing me the other day. He runs by the name Introspection on YouTube. He I guess is following his dream to make videos and have followers that are there. Hopefully he's hopefully got something more. You had a lot of questions before. Tell me, do you want to continue asking me questions like you were the other day? Do you want to ask me the rest of the questions that you didn't ask? You can say yes or no in the chat. We'll, I can actually pull you up on screen, but he does. So, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull you up. And it's going to ask you to approve your camera and your voice being live. And so once you've done that, at the top of the page, there is a thing where you can turn your camera off if you want to. So I'm actually going to invite you to come up and ask the rest of your questions here in front of the audience. The young man is connecting right now. We'll see how he does, whether he gets here or not. Alan, John, and Daryl. It was a small audience. I usually have more when I'm doing this live, but hopefully you will you'll enjoy that. I am going to pull my friend up here, and in fact, if you don't want to be seen, you can. I think your microphone's already live. Talk to me. Let's see.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
I certainly can.
Okay, well, I've been watching since the stream started, and I must admit, you had even not. I thought you had quite a bit of history prior when I first met you, but after listening to all that, I didn't think you could have more, but it turns out you did. So I was rather delighted.
Well,
And I must say,
I'm pleased for that.
there's a certain poetic element in that the guy who is known as Yoda guy is almost as philosophical, if not as much, as the actual character.
Yeah, well, I must admit I take a pride in that. But as I say in the book, I didn't set out to have a philosophy. It was really people like you coming to my little museum in the Caribbean, asking me questions that made me realize that I was giving the same answer or things that were very similar over and over again. And so every time someone left and I had that, I wrote that down. I didn't set out. I may have wanted to write a book, but I didn't sit down with a blank page to write a book. I wrote down each of those thoughts until I had enough to form a book around. And so, I have to thank the fans for inspiring me to write the book.
Yeah, and to draw a correlation to Star Wars, that I'm a fan of the TV shows as well as the movies, and a lot of the Jedi when you watch the TV shows, I think that most of the time when you start throughout the TV shows, they really don't start with a philosophy, or at least they have like the basic Jedi philosophy, but they really haven't formulated their own. But like you, they kind of just passively develop it as they go through the experiences with maybe training younger Jedi or Padawans to use the proper term. So I find that that you are very much like that in that sense.
Well, I had one or two people who, I mean, literally a very small handful in my life who were positive and a positive influence and encouraged me to do that unusual thing. I mean, my dad was very positive in helping me learn skills and firing my imagination. When my dad got sick, I took over his classes. I thought I would just be doing that until he got better, but he didn't get better. And literally, the last conversation I had with my dad was after I'd been making movies for about 4 years, and I really wasn't getting enough work to honestly say that I was making a living at it. And the last conversation I had with him before he died, literally a week before he died, was him saying to me, maybe I should give it up and go for something more normal. I really wish he could have seen what we did on Star Wars and those other things. I like to think he would have been proud.
Being as spiritual, I'm really sorry to hear that. Being the spiritual guy I am, I'd like to think that from where he is now, he has seen what you've managed to accomplish.
Yeah, let's hope so.
So let me ask you this question. I've been dying to ask you because this is one of my favorite characters. I've actually made a whole video on my own channel defending them, and I'm just really curious to know what your opinion is on this character. What do you think of Jar Jar?
I'm probably gonna disappoint you here, but I think that Jar Jar was really designed to be a soft toy for small children to drag around. You know,
Right.
basically, the Ewoks were as well. A lot of stuff was driven directly by the merchandising. When we made that first movie, we didn't even think the movie would be a success, let alone even give any thought to merchandising. But George was, a millennium ahead of us on that, and he got his merchandising deal, and he really pursued it to the hilt. And by the time we got to Jedi, the toys for the Ewoks were already designed. I mean, they came to us as little stuffed toys, and we would say, "Well, these are the Ewoks. These are the different characters." And we, as creature builders, we're trying to make these designs which were really designed around what would be easy to make as a sellable item, and not around what was practical to run around in a forest. I mean, remember, these characters have little eyes, they got heads like this, they're trying to see through these little spaces, they're trying to see where they're going, they're running in a forest, they're falling over leaves, they've got their knees, the crutch is so low, they've got their legs tied together. It really wasn't a good design, and that was one of the things that encouraged me to move on to a different movie on that particular at that particular point in time. Jar Jar Binks, I think they looked at that and thought, oh, all the little kids are going to love Jar Jar, and he's going to become a soft toy that kids drag around with them. And I think it was a great disappointment to them that Jar Jar was considered to be racial slur, and I don't believe that that was intentional in any shape or form. The principle of Jar Jar being the master of the Sith and all the rest of it, I'm glad they didn't pursue that, because I think that would have just about killed off any following from any of the older fans from the classic trilogy. Sorry to tell you that, but yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. Let me ask you: Have you? I know that when I originally asked you this, you haven't seen it, and I understand why. Have you gotten a chance to look at the TV show and Clone Wars and those?
You know, when I was young, I used to like cartoons and other things, but once I started a main career where I had to be driven, I really didn't watch television very much at all. Today, I will, like tonight, I'll have the TV on in the corner. I'll have a computer in front of me, and I'll be working while I'm watching TV. I didn't say this in my talk, but there are two most precious things that you have in life, and neither of them is money. The most precious things you have in life are your loved ones, your family, and the people you really care about. And the other thing that you can never, ever, 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 ever replace. You can always get more money. You can always get another house. You can always get new clothes and various other things. But you can't replace time. Every minute that you waste doing something that is not constructive is a piece of your life you're never going to get back again. And as you get older, you're going to discover that time is not as regular as you think it is. You know, you look at a watch, you look at your watch, every second is the same. But it's not to your personal perspective of life and time. Because when you are 1 day old, to wait a day for something is a lifetime. When you're 90 years old, you get out of bed, you take off your pajamas, you put on your clothes, and it's practically time to put your pajamas back on and go back to bed again. Time is passing at a much faster rate because you're measuring time by the length of your experience. As you get older, people say to me now, "Oh, are you taking it easy in the Caribbean, right? You're retiring." I can't retire. I've still got a bunch of other books to write, and I've still got my holographic show that I want to put on, and I've still got other things that I'm trying to do. I can't retire. I'm running out of time. Time is absolutely critical. Don't waste your time. And the end of the book, it's not including what I told you before, but in the end of the book, I say, no one's going to remember you for all the games you played. No one's going to remember you for all the tweets you made. No one's going to remember you for all the things that you couldn't be bothered to do. Do you really want your life to be measured by all the things you didn't do? So I tend not to watch a lot of TV but I'm working all the time. I'm writing my book. I'm doing other things. I'm dealing with people on the internet. I don't really have downtime. I have a passion for life.
Right,
so
right.
Why would I want to waste my time watching something else? Sometimes I get a good show. Yeah, I'll watch it. But cartoons don't really fire me up. Sorry, Disney.
Yes, the Disney gods will come and smite thee for saying such.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, the only reason I bring it up is because it was actually one of my. It actually was the first exposure I got to Star Wars, because I was taken to see the Clone Wars movie prior to this, and then I got into Star Wars that way. But the only reason I bring it up is because I think if you watch the Clone Wars, Jar Jar has a bit more of a reason to be there than he does in the movies, because they kind of scripted him in there as opposed to and that's the only reason, because I just think that
every time they write something new, they have a good reason they have a good opportunity to make something more of the characters that had no opportunity originally. That started right at the very beginning. Characters that we considered to be really nothing. Oh, we got a room full of bounty hunters. Okay, well, let's have a guy with a scarred face, and we got one of those crocodile creatures. We'll stick him in the yellow suit, and we'll stand him over there. Oh, and we got that white suit from the Super Trooper. Let's paint that green and give it a cloak, and we'll stand him over there. None of them had any names. It was later on when they wrote the books and they did the other stuff that they became Bosk and Dengar and Boba Fett and all of those things. They were just a room full of bounty hunter kind of guys. That's the nature of how all of this has evolved, and how the characters change and evolve through that extended universe.
Right. So next question that I actually had a couple of fans wanting me to ask you. Of course, I know that you haven't seen the TV show, but have you seen the pictures of like Baby Yoda? And if so, how was your reaction?
I've seen Baby Yoda. I saw The Mandalorian. I thought The Mandalorian was rather simplistic. It's reminiscent of TV shows like Kung Fu, with a little bit of mysticism and a lot of fighting. I was very happy that the people who were upset with the last trilogy were happy with The Mandalorian, and because it meant that those people had something that they could connect to, rather than them saying, well, Star Wars is finished and done. That really pleased me. I had been doing last Sunday, I had a big show that we put on, an 8-hour show where, amongst other things, I had 4 of the people on that were working on The Mandalorian, doing the prosthetics and the hair and the special costumes, making armor and other things. And I'm still trying to get through to the guys that built Baby Yoda. I think they did a really good job. Um, I, 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 I was happy with Baby Yoda. I'm pleased to see him there. I'm hoping he won't entirely eclipse, Yoda himself, but he's certainly the hot guy at the moment.
I don't think he will. To be totally honest with you, not that I am an expert in social media or anything, but I haven't seen anybody like stop talking about Yoda simply because Baby Yoda. If anything, it's the other way around.
Well, I
At
think
least
there's another thing here too. Empire Strikes Back was the philosophical Star Wars movie. It was the movie with do or do not, there is no try, or I don't believe it, and that's why you fail. It was the movie that when people are quoting uh, Star Wars, apart from May the Fourth be with you, that's usually those phrases come from that, and 90% of those phrases came specifically from Yoda, and I think. I started to say earlier that there were just a few people that really inspired me with their humility and with their encouragement that made me feel like I wanted to be remembered as that guy who encouraged people rather than a guy who, like everybody else, was full of negativity. And I think that Yoda will always be remembered in that way as that wise guy full of um, philosophical thoughts. Whereas, I haven't seen a lot of philosophy in The Mandalorian or in those other shows yet. We will see.
right. And I know I keep going back to the shows, but there's actually a show in Star Wars Rebels that dedicated the whole or portions of the episode into going really in depth with that very famous quote, do or do not, there is no try. So I think that a lot of the stuff that came like you said, that came after the original movies really had a chance, whether it's the movie or otherwise, to expand upon it. So let me ask you another question. I thought this was a really good one. Where are the original Yoda? Do you know where the original Yoda puppets that were made are? Like, are they in a store warehouse somewhere? Are they owned by the director? Were they sold off?
Okay. Well, first of all, you need in on the 31st of this month, I'm going to be doing another show. It'll be a 4-hour show where we're talking about a number of things. And one of the things I'm going to talk about there is how Yoda was built and all the people that were involved that often people don't know about, or they're confused by exactly who did what. But there were 4 versions of Yoda that were built for Empire Strikes Back. 2 of them were close-up puppets. One of them was radio controlled, and one was a guy in a suit. The guy in the suit was a very, the close-up puppets were made out of foam latex, which is a very soft, very supple material that doesn't like oil, doesn't like sunlight. And so those skins were never going to last 40 years. I have to tell you, you're not going to look the same in 40 years either. It's the environment. It's just what life does to things. They were the puppet which I built. My boss wasn't really very happy about. He was. I kind of got the department out of a hole, and I felt I'd kind of helped him and everyone out, but he didn't like the fact. I think he thought I'd kind of stolen his thunder to some extent. And so when the movie was over, he took that apart to see what I'd done. And then I believe, because there's no remnants of it left, I believe, he threw the bits away. The other puppet, which he built, he stripped down, fixed the things that had caused problems with it, and that became the puppet for Return of the Jedi. That puppet went to the Lucasfilm archive. It got put on a shelf, not in a box, just laid on a shelf, where over time, light and the atmosphere completely destroyed it. And all that remains now is the skull. The walking puppet that would have that skin was expanded chemically, so that would have broken down very quickly, probably within 3 years, I would think. And then there was the radio controlled one, and that too. I don't know whether that ended up with someone from special effects. I haven't seen any sign of it, but the skin would have deteriorated. The mold was broken up. I don't mean broken. I mean, parts of it went to the States. Parts of it ended up in my boss's attic, and I now have some of the stuff from that too. I've been in the process of rebuilding Yoda exactly as he was originally over the past 4 or 5 years. When you're running a business, you can't just devote all your time to doing something. So I started out by building a puppet from memory, which mechanically did everything and was close, but not exact. And then as a result of showing that, I got access to relics that were still around that my boss had. And I reverse engineered from that to be able to remake molds exactly the way the originals were. And the first of those puppets is a limited version that I take to conventions with me. Right now, this COVID thing has stopped me from working because I'm in my home and we can't travel to the workshop to continue that work. But I'm also, part of what I'm doing right now is trying to raise money to keep things going, because I'm in an island that's dependent on tourists, and the tourists aren't going to come back just because America comes out of lockdown or Europe comes out of lockdown. We got to get to a point where everybody's happy and confident and starts going on holiday again. I think we've got to try and survive for the rest of the year. And our bills are high, so I'm worried I'm going to lose my workshop before I can get that job finished. But it's an ongoing thing. It's another passion that I have.
Well, I really hope you don't, because I know many people, myself included, would be ecstatic to see that recreation of Yoda.
Well, you'll see some videos from it on my YouTube channel. If you just put Nick Maley into YouTube, you'll find the channel.
Okay, and I'll be sure to leave it. I already posted the interview that we had earlier. What I could get of it, the audio. I don't know if you saw the post. Did not come out great because of my recording equipment. I did my best to improve it, but I'm going to go ahead and put your channel in the description of that video as well.
Okay. Well, it was nice talking. It was nice talking to you. You got any more questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do have. I wanted to know, or one of the fans wanted to know, and we don't know if you'd know about this, but I figured I'd ask. Mr. Frank Oz, the voice of Yoda, was he the original choice for Yoda to be his voice, or was that like a process? Did you have somebody else in mind originally?
All right. Frank Oz was a part of Yoda from the very beginning. We started, Yoda was sculpted on Frank's arm. There was a political issue. The word animatronics was never applied to movies before Empire Strikes Back. And the reason that people started using that term was because we were makeup artists doing things that other people didn't think we should be doing. You know, they think of makeup artists, we should be putting powder on people's noses. My boss had started to build apes for 2001: A Space Odyssey. And so, you know, people thought, oh, well, you know, the sculptors should be sculpting that, and the plaster shop should be doing the plastering, and the special effects should be making the you know, the mechanisms. It was like we were doing other people out of a job. So to try and get around that, they started to think, oh, maybe they needed a new branch. And what were they going to call what it was that we did? Oh, animatronics. That sounds fancy, doesn't it? None of it was really electronic apart from the radio controlled version. And that was just servos that we, you know, that we bought for well, I didn't do that, but the guys who were doing it, you know, bought for that you would have bought for model aeroplanes, etc. But part of, okay, so we go from people in suits to puppets. Well, according to the union rules, puppets, if there were puppets, should have been built by the props department. So we were upsetting special effects and sculptors and props and everybody. And we were worried that because in the same way, if there wasn't a recognized puppeteer, props was supposed to operate puppets. Well, we had built a very delicate puppet, and we were worried that props might break it and then say to us, there you go, told you we should have built it in the first place. And the Muppets had, they were 15 minutes away in a TV studio making the Muppet Show. And so someone came up with a bright idea that maybe we should ask Jim Henson to come and play Yoda. So they approached Henson, and there was a discussion took place there, and Frank was decided to be the puppeteer, the main puppeteer for Yoda. When I'm talking about main puppeteer, this is Yoda naked, right? So Frank is the neck, he's the jaw, he's the lips, and he's the eyebrows. But someone else has got to operate the eyes. Someone else has got to operate the left hand, the right hand. Someone else has got to operate the ears. So there are actually, at any point in time, 3 or 4 puppeteers for Yoda. And the others weren't even mentioned until the 90s when we put up our first website. So Frank was not just the voice of Yoda. Frank was Yoda. Frank was the puppeteer. He was the one who gave the performance that everybody loves from Empire Strikes Back. Frank is the heart and soul of Yoda. And his assistant puppeteers all worked under Frank's direction. And of course, Frank's working under the direction of the director of the movie, Kirsch. And Kirsch was frightened by Yoda. Everyone was terribly fearful that Yoda would just look like a Muppet, and everyone would laugh at the movie, and it would be a complete failure. So that was a big issue. Frank was the one who slowed Yoda down and made him a real character rather than Kermit the Frog. And while he was doing that, he was delivering the lines, because the person who moves Yoda's mouth has to be the one who's delivering the lines, so that you can coordinate those two things. And during that time, he used several different voices. He assumed that someone else was going to dub the voice. And then sometime later, they called him up and said, that they decided that they would like him to do the voice as well. And consequently, that's how he came to do the voice. When they had had a 16-year lapse and they got to episode 1, nobody knew whether the new Yoda was going to be digital or a puppet. But they knew Frank Oz was there. So the publicity wrote Frank Oz will be Yoda's voice. And from that point on, everybody assumed that he was his voice and overlooked the fact that he was also the puppeteer.
Wow, I would have never thought that somebody would just come over from the Muppets to, but it does make a lot of sense after you think about it. And man, wow, that was a lot more than I was expecting. Wow, okay, that's
Don't
awesome.
I always give you bigger answers than you expected?
Hey, that you when you go digging for like silver and you find diamonds, who won't be happy?
Right. Well, that's cool.
Another question: what do you think of the new movies? Personally, some of them I like, some of them I didn't like. What are your thoughts on the new movies ever since Disney took over?
Um, I'm happy that that Star Wars is continuing. I, I I don't want to put down anything that that they've done. I didn't honestly feel that that the new trilogy was in any way part of the Skywalker saga. That would have been my main issue. It was about a bunch of other people, and Luke was really an incidental character. And I don't think that calling you could call yourself Albert Einstein, but that wouldn't make you Albert Einstein. So I didn't feel that it worked on that level, but they were very well made movies. Um, they just didn't necessarily go in the direction that everybody might have wanted. Each of these sets of movies is going to have their own followers. There's going to be those people who were introduced to Star Wars through the new movies, and they will love them in their own right, in their own way. I'm part of that old generation that you know that 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 started with the classic trilogy, and nothing will for people of my generation. None of the new movies will have the same impact. You have no idea what movies were like before Star Wars was made. Star Wars completely revolutionized the way movies were made, and movies have been made that way ever since. You've grown up with it, but for those of us who watched the sci-fi movies before that, um, there's certain landmark movies that changed, certain things. Star Wars was one of them. American Werewolf in London was another one. Um, Before that, The Wizard of Oz was another one, and even Gone with the Wind, where they did a lot of opticals on that, a lot of matte paintings. These movies were landmark movies that changed the technology.
Huh. Yeah, other movies that I can immediately think of is like The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. I know that one was really famous for the advanced camera angles, I believe, at the time. So it's very interesting to hear how much of a jump Star Wars is. But coming off of that, that does bring me into another question I wanted to ask you. Did you ever see like other, not just other Star Wars movies, but other movies where you see you observed a new technology or technique and you thought to yourself, man, it would have been awesome if we had it back when I was doing Star Wars? Or do you just prefer how you completely did it when you were making Star Wars?
There have always been, movies that were landmarks. One of the ones I didn't mention was the Thing, Rob Bottin's Thing. That was mind-boggling in terms of animatronics. It was taking things further and further and further and further. Um, I liked the movies in the 90s that were a marriage between digital and physical, and that we have gone back to physical characters, and it's nice to see us getting more of that marriage. But there are so many movies where People are walking around in a green room, and all the backgrounds are laid in, and everything else is laid in digitally afterwards. That I think I think a lot of the wonder has been knocked out of movies by by computerization, because no one's surprised by anything anymore. It's like, oh yeah, well, they blew up the universe. Oh yeah, well, you can take the world, curled up like a wave and did something else. There isn't anything that you can't do, so you can't surprise anybody. And I'm gonna wrap this up in another 10 minutes, but let me leave you with something else. Obviously, the most interesting stuff that is happening digitally in digital characters is motion capture, and putting dots all over something that you've created in a computer or elsewhere. Sometimes they'll sculpt it and put the dots on, and then scan it, and then take dots on a human face and have those dots go through. We're talking about Maz and some of those other characters. I think the best of all of that isn't in Star Wars. I think it was Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean. That was really very brilliantly done for a digital character. It was very extraordinary. But let me ask you, where does that lead us as a society? I'm not talking about entertainment anymore. When I can scan your image, and if I don't like your politics, I can show you killing some lady down the street. Where does that take society? When I'm president and I want to go to war, and I can show the leader of another country, um, murdering 3 American nuns. Where does that take it? What do we believe anymore? We were already over 20 years since Forrest Gump met President Nixon. You actually can't believe anything you saw on television in the last 20 years. Cloning people's images is a lot more dangerous than cloning human beings, because if you clone a human being, it's going to have its own brain. If I clone you digitally, you've got whatever brain I decide to put in you, and suddenly people are being swayed through social media to a point where, especially in a society where there's too many guns around and various other things, where does it lead?
Well, I mean, that for the surefire answer, to be totally honest with you, as much as I wish I could tell you a definite answer, the surefire answer can only really be answered by time at this point. What I think is that what does end up happening with technology, I think technology overall is a tool. Like, that's how I'm grateful enough to be able to speak with you here. And
Yeah.
the cloning process, perhaps it could be used to maintain the memory of influential people after they pass away. But it's one of those things that how it influences society is, I think, pretty much determined by how society decides to treat it. I like to use
I'm sorry, but I don't think the society decides at all. You're already controlled by technology. There's only certain things that you can actually do. You can't, in many ways, you can't run your your process where you're going to get paid through PayPal or whatever else without putting in your tax information. You can't get back into your own country without dealing with a computer before you get to immigration. Um, we, I think COVID-19 in some ways it's going to be a forerunner for the future, where more and more people are relying on technology and more people are interacting with each other digitally rather than interacting with each other on their own. I think that we're going to reach a point where people go to work by getting out of bed and crossing the room and sitting down at their computer and operating a machine that's somewhere else. And they're going to be doing more and more, and we are going to become completely dependent upon the technology and actually completely controlled by that technology. I'm sorry if I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's not a matter of conspiracy. This is, if there is a tool, someone will use it. And you can't get infected by the fact that you've destroyed the environment. You can live in a bubble, and it doesn't matter that you've destroyed the environment if you can then operate everything and have machines that are doing stuff. I know that sounds like Terminator and all of those things, but it's where things are going. We've already got robots that can walk around and carry things and do things that human beings can't do, and it's the people who. First of all, the people control the machines, but eventually the machines have to control the people, because you can only do what your computer and your interface allows you to do.
Yeah, that's a very very valid point. I don't know if we're gonna get to the point where technology can completely. I mean, maybe we will, but I don't know if we get to the point where the environment, the destruction of the environment, doesn't affect an individual, because ultimately a lot a lot of it is more or less dependent on the environment. For instance, water supply. The more toxic and polluted water becomes, the harder it'll be able to get. The more expensive it will be. Getting sources of energy that will eventually run out.
Yeah, I think we're getting into another discussion there. It's another place, and worthy of another discussion too. Um, but those are, I think those are going to become significant issues. So
Yeah.
we've been doing this for 2 hours. I'm going to wrap it up because I got another business call that's going to come in a little while, and I want to spend a little time with my wife so she doesn't think I've abandoned her for a computer. I hope you enjoyed,
Oh, I loved it. I loved it.
and I hope that our other folks that are here that are still with us. So I guess that wasn't bad. Daryl and Alan and John. We didn't. Oh, hold on a second. There's another question. Let me see what we've got here. Um, Doing courses with masterclass. Well, masterclass has to ask you to do it in the first place, and uh, technology is always moving forward in many different ways. There are, what I did 40 years ago was cutting edge. It isn't cutting edge today. Um, there were hardly anybody to actually be able to make any of those creatures for Mos Eisley when we started out. We scratched together everybody that was available, and that meant there were 6 of us in a small room. Um, Today, with the internet, there are literally thousands and thousands of people that are looking at things and making things and learning how to do things. There's far more people doing. There were far more people doing prosthetics during the period that no one was using prosthetics because they were all using digital figures. There were more of them then than there were when we first started. And people, I recently I had Brian Sipe on, who was doing the prosthetics for Mandalorian. He was on this last weekend on the show that I was doing, and he was very gracious to say in the emails before the show that I had been one of the people that had inspired him to get into the business, but the techniques that they're using now have evolved, and I think that really, when you have places like the Stan Winston School of Creature Arts that you can subscribe to, I'm not sure that you need me teaching you maybe how we did things in an older sense. I think my role has changed. I think my role has changed to more to doing what I'm doing now. My role is here to try and inspire you to be the new creative minds, the ones who are going to take the works that we did and carry it to a new level. Then there was silence.
I just wasn't sure if you were continuing on with the questions that other people were asking or not. So I didn't want to.
That was it. The question was, had I considered doing a masterclass to present related content that I presented today? But what I presented today was about philosophy. It wasn't about creature effects. And maybe if someone asked me to do a class for that or a TED, I'd be happy to do it. I'd be happy to talk about that. I think that there are followers in the world and there are leaders in the world. And you have to remember, when you're looking at the internet and other things, you have to remember that you can't lead by following other people.
Right. But I don't want to keep you here if you have another pressing matter.
I'm gonna have to call it quits at 2 hours, and we just hit it. So maybe you'll come and check out one of my other things. We're going to have a 4-hour session with guests talking about cosplay and costume building and stuff of that nature. That's going to come up on the 17th. Just keep an eye on my Facebook and you'll find out about that. And then we're going to have another one that's all about movie effects that are going to be on the 31st.
Okay.
And I'll throw in a few other bits and pieces along the way.
Yeah, and I'll probably make sure I attend those for sure.
That's cool. Well, let me before you go, let me see. I've got a thing. No, not ask a question. I did have some. There you go. No. Yes, that's it. Let me just show that. If anybody's interested in getting the book, you support our nonprofit. Just click that link that just came up. It's going to take you to a page where you can use any credit card to get it sent directly to your home. While we've been in lockdown, I did a deal with my publisher. They're going to they will ship it directly from the publisher to you. And so instead of you buying it on Amazon and our foundation getting maybe 70 cents, then when you buy it here, we'll get 50%, about $8. That will go towards trying to keep the foundation going so I can finish rebuilding Yoda. So that's there if you want to click on it. I thank you all for coming, and I'm gonna shut this down, but I think you're still going to be able to click on that link afterwards if you want to. Thanks for being here. and maybe I'll see you again sometime. Friend me on Facebook, and then you'll know what's going on, where, and when. I'll see you again.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I know I certainly enjoyed making it because, as you can guess, it was awesome being able to talk to the Yoda guy. If you guys want to listen to the other portion of the interview or just another video where I defend Jar Jar, please don't hate me for that. I'll leave it down in the description below. Otherwise, I hope you guys stay safe. I post every other week, so until then, hear nothing and listen to all. Bye, guys!